A man is a person. A man has hands. A man uses his hands. The man works. Work is an action. A man works in a field. A man works in a shop. A man works all day. The man is tired. Why does the man work? The man works for a coin. A coin is small. A coin is metal. A coin is money. One coin is a little money. Many coins are much money. Much money is wealth. A man with much money is a rich man. A man with a little money is a poor man. The study of money is economics. The study of wealth is economics. The study of work is economics. We look at the past. In the past, there is a big church. The big church has rules. The rules are for economics. The rules are for money. The big church looks at the rich man. The big church looks at the poor man. What does the big church say? The big church says a poor man is a good man. The big church says a rich man is a bad man. The big church says wealth is bad. Wealth is a danger. A man with wealth loves the wealth. The man does not love God. The big church says a man must not seek wealth. A man has 10 coins. Another man has 0 coins. The second man needs a coin. The second man asks for a coin. The first man gives a coin. This is a loan. What is a loan? A loan is giving a coin for a short time. Tomorrow, the second man must give the coin back. The first man wants more. The first man says, I give you 1 coin today. Tomorrow, you give me 2 coins. The extra coin is a price. The price for the loan is usury. What is usury? Usury is money making money. Usury is an extra coin for a loan. The big church looks at usury. The big church says usury is very bad. The big church says usury is a sin. A sin is a bad action. A sin is an action against God. A man cannot do usury. A man cannot take an extra coin. This is the old economics. Time passes. We see a new man. The man is Jean Calvin. Jean Calvin is a man in the past. Jean Calvin is a thinker. Jean Calvin lives in a city. The city is Geneva. Jean Calvin reads. Jean Calvin thinks. Jean Calvin writes. Jean Calvin is a leader. Does Jean Calvin agree with the big church? No, Jean Calvin does not agree. Jean Calvin has new rules. Jean Calvin has a new mind for economics. What does Jean Calvin say? Jean Calvin looks at work. Jean Calvin looks at wealth. Jean Calvin looks at usury. Jean Calvin changes the rules of economics. Jean Calvin thinks about God. Jean Calvin says God is absolute. God is the total king. God knows everything. God knows the future. Jean Calvin says God has a list. The list has names. A name is on the list. The man with the name goes to a good place after death. A name is not on the list. The man goes to a bad place after death. A man does not see the list. The list is a secret. A man asks a question. The question is my name on the list? Jean Calvin gives an answer. Jean Calvin says work is a sign. What is a sign? A dark cloud is a sign. A dark cloud is a sign of rain. Smoke is a sign. Smoke is a sign of fire. A sign shows a hidden thing. Jean Calvin says hard work is a sign. Jean Calvin says a man must work. Work is for God. Every work is holy. A man works hard. The man gets wealth. Is wealth bad? No. Jean Calvin says wealth is a good sign. Wealth is a sign of the list. A rich man is on the list. Jean Calvin says a man must seek work. Jean Calvin says a man must seek wealth. Economics is now a holy action. Jean Calvin looks at usury. A man gives a loan. A man takes an extra coin. The big church says this is a sin. Jean Calvin says no. Jean Calvin says a coin is a tool. A tool does work. A hammer is a tool. A coin is a tool. A coin does work. The extra coin is the work of the first coin. The extra coin is interest. What is interest? Interest is a good usury. Interest is a fair price for a loan. Jean Calvin says interest is not a sin. Jean Calvin says interest is good for the city. Jean Calvin allows interest. Jean Calvin allows the extra coin. Jean Calvin changes economics. A man is a worker. The man follows Jean Calvin. The man works hard. The man gets much wealth. What does the man do with the wealth? Does the man buy a big house? No. Jean Calvin says a big house is bad. Does the man buy fine food? No. Jean Calvin says fine food is bad. A man must live simply. This simple life is asceticism. What is asceticism? Asceticism is a simple life. Asceticism is a life with no luxury. Luxury is fine food. Luxury is a big house. Asceticism is no luxury. Asceticism is the rule of Jean Calvin. The man has wealth. The man has asceticism. The man does not spend the wealth on luxury. Where does the wealth go? The wealth goes back to the work. The wealth buys a bigger shop. The bigger shop makes more wealth. The more wealth buys more tools. This is a cycle. The cycle has a name. The name is capitalism. What is capitalism? Capitalism is wealth making more wealth. Capitalism is the cycle of work and coins. Max Weber is a man. Max Weber lives after Jean Calvin. Max Weber is a thinker of economics. Max Weber writes a book. Max Weber looks at Jean Calvin. Max Weber says Jean Calvin creates capitalism. Max Weber says Jean Calvin builds modern economics. Jean Calvin makes work holy. Jean Calvin makes wealth a sign. Jean Calvin makes interest good. Jean Calvin builds asceticism. Jean Calvin starts the cycle. Jean Calvin is a master of new economics.